Welcome to The Big Picture. I'm Phil Arno. A wise man once said, things change. That's it. Not complicated. Things do change. Fashions, technology, habits. Sometimes we move, sometimes we move on. Lately, it seems people have been changing their shopping habits. Let me back up for a little. For hundreds, maybe even thousands of years, people have been changing everything, and yet somehow nothing. You want a great example? Okay, I'm going to give you a good example. You're going to love this one. A while ago, I was in Los Angeles, and I happened to be at a place displaying items that were of special interest to me. I shot some video, and I want to show you a couple of short clips. Okay, for instance, see those cooking pots and pans there? That skillet on the left, that frying pan, I have one like that in my kitchen right now, that iron skillet. And coming up next, those little figurines. My mom used to have those in our living room on some shelves. She had, like Hummels and stuff. And all those pieces of jewelry, I see that in jewelry stores, all the time. Very fashionable. I know women that would, kill for stuff like that. I'm no expert, but I think that's really very fashionable. Nothing too unusual about these things, right? When I was growing up on Rugby Road in North Buffalo, any of those things could have been right there in my house, except they weren't. You see, that frying pan and those little statues and all that jewelry that my mom would have liked so much, those items were in fact on display in a traveling exhibit of items dug up after being buried in Pompeii for 2,000 years, right? 2,000 years. Think about it. Halfway around the world in 2,000 years, and the people and what they used to cook with, what they used to decorate their shelves with, and the jewelry that they wore. Change? Absolutely, but not really. So where am I going with all this? There's a discussion about how in America now, a lot of things seem to be changing. Our shopping habits, for instance, are undergoing a fundamental change. Pretty extreme if you ask some people. But aren't we experiencing anything unusual? Well, think about it. In the early 1900s, after a long period of Americans shopping at the general store, Mr. Sears and Mr. Roebuck came up with the nation's first version of Amazon.com. When they came out with their famous Sears and Roebuck catalog, well, guess what? You could get anything under the sun, anything you could possibly think of, from rubber bands to underwear, from furnaces to shotguns, and everything in between. All you had to do was look it up, place your order, in a little while, it showed up, delivered right to you. Right? Does that sound familiar? And that was over 120 years ago. Mail order made Sears a household name. It changed the way Americans thought about shopping. And then cities began to grow, larger and larger, and then stores with departments for every need sprouted up to handle the demand. And some clever individuals started calling these new centers of trade department stores. What a clever concept. What could possibly go wrong? Until suburbia reared its ugly head. And that brings us to the ubiquitous suburban shopping mall, taking its rightful place, dominating the nation's consumer dollar like bears grabbing salmon out of the thin air as they head upstream for the promised land. But alas, time marches on, and so does change. Now, the ghosts of Mr. Sears and Mr. Roebuck are reaching out, ironically, kind of like a snake devouring its own tail, in this new version of mail order called, by the way, the internet, or maybe Amazon, is ending the reign of the mail order Sears and the department stores like Macy's, and dare we say, the suburban shopping malls. We can only wonder if Mr. Jeff Bezos and his Amazon can last as long as Mr. Sears and Mr. Roebuck managed to hang on? Well, that's for a future version of the big picture. Right now, I'd like to get back to the question at hand, and that jumps out at us from all this talk of change. And the question really is, what's the last of these shopping habits going to do? The one that seems to be trying to hang on and desperately survive, or at least, the very least, reinvent itself, and that's the shopping mall. Here at WBBZ, we're based at the Eastern Hills Shopping Mall. We've been hearing a lot of questions recently and no answers. Now with me is John DeSciullo to talk about a meeting that we went to with the mall management and some tenants, a small group of tenants, and the meeting that we had. Now we started this discussion because a lot of the talk has been about the long-term plans that Uniland has with the mall. And we've had a lot of tenants talk to us about what they're going through now. The transition may take a couple of years, and in the interim, people are asking us, is the mall still open? What are the immediate plans?
Well, I think, Phil, what we did is we took a page from our news days with the background that we have, and we took the camera down, and we wanted to do some reporting, basically, and the representatives from Uniland were there, and one of the things we did with the mall managers at that meeting and some of the tenants is basically try to get clarity and try to get information, because we've seen things in other media. We've seen things in the Buffalo News, Business First, channels 2, 4, and 7, so we needed to get our information. We are not only a part of the media, but we're stakeholders in the well-being of the mall because we're tenants in the mall. And a studio space like this is not something you could replicate easily. So I think it was interesting from our perspective as tenants and as individuals in the media to get that information and bring it to the public and find out what we could find out, because this is an iconic destination. You know, when you think about, as you put in your opening, about how shopping has changed and how lives have changed, there's still something about destination. And this is a destination, and it's centered in an area that's very populated. You know, it's a neighborhood that has some means, and it's certainly in a high trafficked area. So the well-being of the Eastern Hills Mall, not only for us but for the community at large, was very important to do. And the meeting that you had as a follow-up here, which was met originally with perhaps a few raised eyebrows from the mall management and Uniland, why is Phil Arno and WBBZ having this meeting? Well, we wanted to clear the air. We wanted to get the word out, and we wanted to do it in a way that's positive. We weren't the enemy in this situation. We were somebody that was we were an entity looking to get the information out, and we did, and we'll see some of the clips from that in just a second.
That's a subject for another show, but briefly, the perception of the media today is really tainted because the media makes its money in a lot of instances by being negative, being confrontational, and putting a slant on events that are sensational and not necessarily positive in a lot of respects, because they feel as if that's going to make them more watchable. And in this instance, I think there was a little trepidation on the part of the mall. Is this going to be a negative slant on everything? Are these people going to kind of slam us for whatever? And so we weren't really warmly receptive, at this whole inquisitive atmosphere that we've created. But there was no atmosphere. I mean, there was no answers. We had a lot of questions, but there were no real answers. And a lot of the tenants here, as you'll see from some of the sound bites, they were a little bit skittish about what was going on.
Well, what was very encouraging is mall manager Russ Fulton was able to make it here to the WBBZ-TV studio recently for the meeting that we were just talking about. And you'll see in this first clip how Russ was able to identify not only what positives there are coming, but also some new tenants that are coming in as well. Let's take a look.
So we want to continue to keep adding tenants, and I think in last night's memo, I put a couple more of them. Golf simulators coming in, barbershop with BOCES is coming in, 2 doctors' offices coming in, just to keep the traffic building in the mall.
So it was encouraging, Phil, to have Russ here.
Yeah, and we had Ed Rath from the Erie County Legislature here, and he weighed in. This is not just a localized North Towns story. The Erie County has a an economic interest in the Eastern Hills Mall because it is an impact in the area that goes far beyond the North Towns.
It is, and it's an economic engine for this community. It employs people. It's a destination for shopping. And one of the things that I think by having Ed Rath here, it gave a third pair of eyes to this because we're all living it. So are the tenants. So is Russ Fulton, the mall management. So is Uniland and Mountain Development. So for Ed to come in, I thought really impressed the tenants who came to our meeting and impressed us in that the Erie County, as you said, Erie County legislature at large has an interest economically in what this is all about.
And he expressed his interest in helping out any way he can, and he did make a comment. Let's listen to what he had to say.
The tenants play a very, very important role, and Russ, I was encouraged to hear you say that the first 2 to 4 years, while phase one is being conducted, the impact on the tenants will be at a minimum, which is great because they are partners as well as stakeholders as well as all the rest in this entire process.
Phil, some of the premise of this new development at Eastern Hills Mall is based in theory with what Crocker Park has done in Ohio. And it's my understanding, we've never been to Crocker Park, but it's my understanding that that is a lifestyle destination and that it really focuses in on local businesses. And, one of the things that we've seen here at the Eastern Hills Mall, there are a lot of home-based businesses. Some of the national chains have left. And, in your introduction, you talked about how the internet has changed that dynamic. But the home-based businesses that are here really have invested time, effort, and money and energy to develop. And Russ Fulton, the manager here, talked about a specific business here in the mall, one of several, that has some immense local connections. So let's hear about this business from Russ.
I spent 2 hours today in Expo 68. If you've never been in, do yourself a favor. Let them give you the tour of. These are all Buffalo-based incubator businesses, from shoes to jewelry to. It's amazing. We see belt buckles that are all made. Bedazzled, which is based right here in Williamsville. It's a young girl starting this. So, absolutely, do we need that group to keep us moving along? In the interim, my email last night said, please, in all your social media posts that you're sharing, remind the shoppers that we are a safe place to shop. We still have great opportunities here. They can go to the DMV, they can go get their hair done, their nails done, they can go shopping. We have an outstanding JCPenney. So it's getting the word out, and absolutely we should form committees on that.
Well, the point of this whole thing is that there has been this silence, and again, in the interim, people are asking about what's the current status. And the consumer out there, you people who do the shopping, that's the lifeblood of the businesses that are here. And most of the big chain stores have moved out. Sears is having hard times, Macy's. Those are the things that in the past have been the big anchors, the big attractions to malls. And without those here and at the other malls in the area, the nature of mall shopping has changed, and that leaves the little guys. And the little guys, proportionally speaking, they have a huge amount of their money involved in their business and the build out that they have in the malls. And that makes it very critical for them to know what's going on.
Well, and one of those tenants is Dave Scrivani, who owns and runs Rockies. And of course, that speaks to the lifestyle component. You come to the mall and you go to Rockies because you play games and enjoy time with your family and your kids. And Dave was here and had some pretty powerful things to address with the group.
It's a tough situation for everybody. So and for us, it's hard for us to make any more economic commitment to this mall, not knowing what's our future. And we have a couple $1 million sitting in Rockies, and it's difficult for us to say, hey, every year we have to refresh this place, but this year we did not do that because we weren't sure we were going to be here. So yeah, it's great to see that Russ sitting here talking with us and us talking with him so that we know, hey, we've got a future.
And hopefully there will be a future, and that then that'll keep these people going. And they're good businesses. It's a good experience, and it'll provide revenue in the interim until the long term is in place. And speaking of revenue, we're going to toss to a break so that we can have some revenue. We'll be back right after these messages.